Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex,
And I'm Annie.
and we are joined today with Eric Moeller, who is the founder and CEO of Freewyld. And we are so excited to see you, Eric. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we're really excited to learn more about you. And I told you just off camera, I was reading about your bio and just reading where you'd come from. And I was surprised that you've been in the business so long because we haven't run into you at a conference or really seen much of you. So I would love to hear more about your journey and how you got into short-term rentals and then learn about Freewyld.
Yeah, I've been in the short-term rental space for quite some time. I got into real estate investing. I'm originally from New Jersey. I got into real estate investing right after high school, like fixing and flipping houses. And back then, I got into vacation rentals like right around 2006, 7, and 8 down in the Jersey Shore markets. And that was like way before Airbnb was around. We were renting stuff on VRBO and on Craigslist and things like that. So I've been in the space for quite some time as an investor. But when I moved to San Diego about 9 years ago, that's when I discovered Airbnb as a business model. So kind of played with multiple different models from scaling a rental arbitrage company back in the early days, which moved into a luxury property management service for properties here in Southern California, some in Mexico, Colorado, things like that. That then turned into a educational company. So we were helping short-term rental hosts from all around the world scale hospitality brands. And that was a lot of fun. My partner and I, Jasper, scaled that over the last 5 years or so. But through that process, as we were helping other short-term rental hosts grow their brands, I was building Freewyld in the background. And this has really kind of turned into a passion project for me. And now we're focused on growing this throughout the country. So we're focused on buying these like really cool cabin communities and nature inspired locations. We fully renovate them. We have a really cool, unique guest experience that we build out in these brands or in the cabins. And now we're focused on growing this. So we have our first location in Idlewild, California, and now we're opening up our second location in Texas, which we're pretty excited about.
Wow, really interesting. And definitely a varied group of projects that you've got there, but it also, it just speaks to something that Annie and I talk about all the time of like all these projects, like they seem kind of like separate, but they're really very much intertwined, right? As far as your experience and the people that you bring into them. But so with Freewyld, so these are cabins and you go and you redo them. Is this like campsites that you're buying or what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so we focus on buying like old vacation rental communities. So the markets that we look at are markets that are nature inspired locations that are 2 to 3 hour drives from metro areas. So here in SoCal, there's a handful of different mountain towns and desert towns that we're moving into, and like the property that we're looking at in Texas is about an hour outside of Austin in the hill country. So we look for these really beautiful secondary towns that already have a vacation rental or short-term rental market part of it. And then we seek out and buy these old cabin communities. So we buy old vacation rental communities that have a handful of existing cabins. We go in there, fully renovate them, bring them up to our brand standards. And then we also build our what we call Freewyld cabins on the land as well. So all of the properties that we're working on, not only are we renovating, but we're also building new purpose-built cabins on there. And the merge, we're kind of merging like the boutique hotel world because we're buying properties that have boutique hotel or hotel licensing, all of that. But the way that we design these properties and then market the properties is each individual cabin is a different design and theme. And they're marketed and rented as individual cabins to short-term rental travelers.
Very cool. We talked to somebody recently. There's a gentleman, and I'm blanking on his name, and I'm embarrassed. His name is Carter something. He's from HGTV, and he bought an old, I guess it used to be like a camp up in, it might be up in Canada or like up in New England area somewhere, but it was like a bunch of cabins all around a lake, and he's got into it and he's like renovating it and got into it thinking like, this is not going to be a problem. Then all of a sudden, like, there's a problem when you buy some of these old cabins because they weren't built on, firm ground. They don't have good foundation. So I'm curious, when you go in to do these things, I mean, do you have a specific budget for each group, or do you go in and think like, okay, we know we're going to have to rebuild some or just renovate a few? Like, what does that look like? Because I feel like that's just almost an unknown until you really, really dig into it.
Yeah, the renovation side is insane. My background comes from, again, I was a real estate investor, and I was in the construction field for a while. So like my background is in renovating old properties and flipping them or renting them out. So I have a lot of experience with that game, but it could be a nightmare if you don't buy the right property. Or if you buy the wrong property, it could be a nightmare. Look, at the end of the day, like real estate investing and like buying these properties, it all comes down to numbers. And for us, building the brand of Freewyld, it was a big gamble because we were going to bring an asset to this marketplace that there was really no other competitors in the space that had these elevated design forward cabins. And so it was a big gamble for us on if the market was going to really accept what we were bringing to the marketplace. But right away, we started recognizing like our guests were willing to pay extra money, pay more money for a elevated experience, right? To answer your question, it's going into renovations are always a challenge. Go in there with some type of budget, but the moment you open up a wall, especially on these old cabins, the property that we have in Idlewild, it's an old mountain town. Most of these cabins were built without permits and like all these things. And now we're still running into those issues. But as part of our model, we kind of expect that. We put contingencies in place, but we really focused on creating something that was truly unique for the marketplace. And the guests they're absolutely loving it. And they're willing to pay extra money for a better experience in this town. So it was worth it for us to take on that risk.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so, two questions. One, the properties that you're buying, had they previously been on Airbnb? I'll ask that first. Like, had they already been on vacation rental, short-term rental type websites, or they had just not even been in that sphere before?
No, so all the cabins that we're buying are old vacation rental communities. So they're already on like, VRBO or booking.com and, some Airbnb, but these are properties that, most likely have been ran by mom and pop operators for a very, very long time. They haven't really updated anything. And, we've all been to those like mountain towns where you see the cabin communities that are always there that, the owners just, it works for them. It's been in the family for a long time, and now they're looking to exit. So for us, it's our model is like we're able to go in there and buy them and like very quickly clean it up and then start marketing it and getting some cash flow as we're developing out the brand and looking at the renovation costs and all of that to bring it up to the Freewyld standard.
And my second question, is it one entity that's your investment group that is funding all of this, or is it different people that you have for each community?
Freewyld is like a opco propco model, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
have so we have the front end opco, which is the brand, the customer service, all of that, the marketing. And then the propco is our syndication. So we raise capital through a bunch of different investors to take these properties down. And then, eventually we'll create our own fund. But as of right now, we're just raising per property that we take on.
If somebody's listening and they have an old community that they're looking to get out of it, and it's in a unique location that's not like a high end, or not say high end, not a high traffic destination, they should reach out to you and have a
Oh,
They
yeah.
should
conversation.
reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, let's
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure
Right to the
yeah.
end if you're
Well,
listening.
no, yeah. Well, I was just curious. Like, if are you actively looking for new destinations?
Yeah. I mean, we're all in on this. It's something that's super exciting. We built a really incredible team over the last year. We're underwriting so many of these properties. And look, right now it's a very challenging time to buy real estate. Money is very, very expensive. So is labor and material. And sellers haven't really caught up with the times to know that like they're not really budging on their prices and expectations. So there's a lot of standoff and negotiations. So we underwrite a lot of these properties. We're not looking for grand slams when we buy these homes. These communities. Our focus is to bring something to these communities that will last for a very long time. This is a generational type of focus for us. So yeah, we're looking. We need to buy more. We want to buy more. I shouldn't say need. We want to buy more. We have some investors that are interested in and continue to support us on this, and constantly looking for new investors as well. So yeah, if anybody has cabin communities or know of one, we would love to take a look at it.
Is it just cabins, or would you do other types of communities too?
Yeah, so good question. We actually, this property that we're trying to purchase right now, they have unique structures on the property like domes and tree houses and things like that. So we're going to take that on, but we're going to be building out more cabins on the property. So yeah, I would say like we're not a glamping company. I know a lot of glamping companies are growing quite a bit, and those are fun. I just stayed at Under Canvas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that company. So that was my first experience with them up in Glacier National Park, and it was fun. You know, it was really cool, but it's not Freewyld. I really value space. I get really inspired by design and space. Yeah, I love cabins. I want to feel at home when I'm traveling, you know, and like feel comfortable in spaces. So, yeah, we focus predominantly on cabins.
That makes sense. I know Annie and I both love cabins, and we've actually stayed in one together not long ago, a few months ago this year up in Gatlinburg. And, I'm in the Myrtle Beach market. So it's like most of my travel really ends up being more in like in other beach destinations, staying in a nice hotel or a nice condo vacation rental. But there's something about staying in a cabin that's just, it's unique. And I feel like when you go to some of them, especially, it's like the accommodations become the destination unto themselves of like you're there because of the house or the cabin and the amenities that it has, and that's really hard to create, I think, in a condo, in some of the more traditional vacation rental type accommodations. So it's a great model, really interesting.
You talked about your elevated experience and kind of blending the boutique hotel. So tell us a little bit about what that entails in terms of like if I come and stay in a Free Wild property, like what is it that I'm getting that I wouldn't get by renting from, ABC company that has a cabin down the road?
I've had quite a bit of short-term rental hosting experience at many different levels. And one thing that I started recognizing is like our industry as a whole is going through like a maturity stage where the guests are really seeking a more of a elevated experience. They want more properties that feel good, that feels like someone actually put intention into the design and the materials that are in the property. They really want that professionalism of hosting and connection with the people that are hosting them, either a company or an individual. For many years, I think our industry just went through this thing of like throwing cheap furniture in places, automating everything, and trying not to do any type of customer service or connection with the guests. And I think, again, we're kind of maturing through that as an industry from the traveler and from the host side. So it was really important to me that we created something that would leave a mark on the people that come to our properties. So first is the space, right? So like we put a ton of intention behind our designs, the materials that we're buying, like everything when you're at a Freewyld, all the way down to the forks and knives, have some type of character to it. It's a mix of modern and reclaimed type of products, right? I love being at properties where you're just like, you're picking up things and looking at it, and you're discovering new aspects of the home. And we put that effort into the design. So that was really important to us. And then two is on the customer service side. It's like we're still a short-term rental business, right? So we do have automations and guests do self-check-ins and things like that. I got obsessed with hospitality, especially after reading Unreasonable Hospitality, which I highly recommend everybody to read and reread that book. So we started implementing that into our business of understanding like how do we take short-term rentals and bring it to the next level of hospitality. So we've really implemented Unreasonable Hospitality to make sure that our guests are experiencing a world-class hospitality experience every single time they stay at the property, right? And we can get into details on how we do that, but that was like our really leading from the heart, like really, we call it surrendering to service. So it's like, no matter the situation, we're here to correct that situation and make it right and make your experience better with us. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it freaking feels good. And guests are like, they're coming back to us quite a bit now and staying with us. And that's the piece that we absolutely love. And then lastly, we've created something what we call wild mode in our properties. Where we're helping our guests through certain programming. We're helping our guests disconnect from technology when they're at our houses, at our cabins. And that's really become our identity with our properties and our guests. And I can get into the how on all of that. But to me, that's how we are separating ourselves and creating this unique property and brand for the short-term rental space is those three main areas.
I just want to mention one thing because I think this has come up a lot, and I feel like this is now certainly a common denominator of the companies that really want to be able to focus on that unreasonable hospitality. And a lot of them that are able to not only say they want to do that, but then actually execute on it are the ones that they own the properties, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, Annie understands. I mean, like Marriott, they could do things as far as like hotel portfolio or any of the hotel brands that are out there because they, well, I guess they're franchise, but still the standards are there. And in this case, with vacation rental, the companies that they own the portfolio or their investment owned, they're able to make those recommendations. They're able to make changes. They're able to do things that when you've got 400 homeowners is a little bit harder to implement. So I feel like that's just, that's becoming more of a trend of these different pop-up ways to do vacation rentals. And with the investment side that you're really able to control that experience, which will be interesting to see like where this all goes. I mean, if that becomes more of the norm and that vacation rental companies are now trying to find more investment partners instead of trying to find homeowners, but to actually buy properties that they manage, it's a complete paradigm shift for our industry. But
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with Wander?
Yeah.
So they started as real estate investors. I really look up to what they have created and what they are creating. They started as investors buying their own properties, but then that's a very difficult model to scale. Real estate just takes a very long time to grow. So they've recently, in the last year, moved into the property management side. And this, to me, like this is exactly what I think the industry is maturing into, is as a property manager, they have a brand, they have brand standards, and they have partner standards, right? So they only accept in properties that meet their certain standards and allow them to implement those standards in their properties, right? So I think that's where the maturity is coming from of like, instead of vacation rental managers, short-term rental managers, just saying yes to any type of property that's coming their way and focusing on like, hey, we're at 400 net, we have to get to 500. Let's just keep growing. It's more of like, what is our brand? Who are we serving? What's this experience that we're trying to create? And then how do we find the partners to help us grow that? Right. So I do see that happening quite a bit. And that's the stuff that I love because it's like, it's a win-win-win for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's actually something that Alex and I were actually having a conversation with somebody earlier today via text about kind of like somebody who could take kind of that hotel franchise, not the franchise model, but kind of that branding and get into the vacation rental space. And so I think that people in the business are hungry. When I came up in the vacation rental side of the business, it was exactly what you were just saying. It was all about land grab. It was trying to get as many units as quickly as possible because that was what you could show people the value of your business was how many units you had on plan. And then it was like, what is your top line? But at the end of the day, your bottom line is still what it was if you'd had 100 units and really paid attention because it's just numbers and like the amount of work that you have to do it is just really, really hard. And I'm glad you brought up Wonder because I was been following them for a little while, and it's really fascinating because what they got so hyper specific on the type of service and the level of service that they wanted to offer that it just wasn't scalable. You can't have a Tesla at every house. You can't, like there's just things that you can't do, but it set the bar high. So now like there's some things that people are looking to, and I think it's a game changer for the industry. And it speaks to what a lot of the professional large scale companies have been saying for a long time is like, how do we have some level of standards from the very beginning that, you're going to go left or right on it based on what your type of business model ends up wanting to be, where your passion lies. But we need to have some sort of sense of what are we, who are we, like defining, what that business is. And so what you're doing, I think fits in that space really well.
We'll be back in just a minute after a word from our premier brand sponsor, Boom.
Hi, my name is Fred Boothby with Enjoy Unique Stays. Our main market is Chattanooga, Tennessee, but we do have some properties in Southwest Michigan and also in Western North Carolina. We have about 110 plus properties in our portfolio. The most challenging parts about running a vacation rental business is accounting. Trust accounting is always a big challenge. Operations is always a challenge. When we decided to move to Boom, there was several problems we were trying to solve or things we were trying to accomplish. One was, we wanted to be with a company that we felt valued customer service, valued our recommendations for product update requests, was responsive. Now we're certainly using it for reviews, responding to reviews. We're using it for the unified inbox, all the guest communication. We're doing a lot of accounting in there. And they have a wonderful task management. I would absolutely refer friends and colleagues to Boom. I do it quite frequently. I'm a big fan of Boom. If you're not looking for a dinosaur and you're looking for something that's going to be relevant into the future in what I think will be a very big and meaningful way, even if you think, hey, we're not really ready to switch to Boom, you need to be talking to them, because seeing where they're at right now, where they're going, there's a lot of great things happening there.
Head over to boomnow.com to see a demo of this revolutionary software, and be sure to include that you heard about Boom on the Alex and Annie podcast. Our listeners receive 50% off onboarding fees, and the first month is free. Go to boomnow.com and see for yourself how AI is revolutionizing the future of property management systems.
When I first started growing my arbitrage company back in the day, we got it upwards of 150 plus units pretty quickly. And then once I was introduced to the management model, especially we started doing luxury management, larger properties. We started, to your point, we started recognizing like one management client of these luxury properties equaled 5 or 6 of our smaller properties that we were, and it's like, why would we want to continue to grow this other company? And it was all out of ego, right? At the end of
Oh,
the
absolutely.
day.
Yeah.
And it's like, as entrepreneurs, we got to challenge that of like, just because we can grow, does that really align with us as and our lifestyle and with our business, the vision, all of that? And just to grow is not the best model. You want to obviously make sure it's profitable, but at the end of the day, it's like we're in the hospitality business, right? So we have to create these products and places that will really serve human beings. And just because we have 4, 5, 600 of it doesn't mean that we're doing a great job. And, it's like, that's my recommendation is like, take your time, get super clear on what you're creating, what's your brand standards, who are you serving, what properties align with that. And I think what we're doing in Freewyld, yes, we own the properties, but at the end of the day, that's a repeatable process regardless of the model.
I'm curious too. I mean, a big part of that, of course, is identifying the KPIs, especially when you've got investors involved in this, and not only just from the return that Freewyld is getting and your investors are getting, but also like how can you continuously up the guest experience based on how the property is performing. But what does your tech stack look like for a project like this?
Well, on the front end, look, what we have now, I don't necessarily know are the right tools for us to scale with. Although, like, we're taking that approach to make sure that the tools that we're bringing on that we can grow with. But yeah, from like PMS to pricing to project management, like we use Hostfully as our back end. We use Price Labs as our revenue management tool. And we one thing I didn't mention is we also launched a service side of Freewyld, where we offer revenue management as a service to operators and managers that are doing $1 to $30 million a year in revenue. Because we started, as we were growing Freewyld, we developed out a process that worked a strategy that worked really, really well for us. And then we started implementing that in other people's businesses and it started scaling. And through that, we have found like Price Labs. I love all the other pricing tools, but Price Labs is by far, in my opinion, the best tool for any operator or host to use and grow with over time. So we love that company. We love that tool. We use ClickUp for our project management and internal, management of the company. Yeah, it depends on how deep you want to go. We have a tech stack this
Yeah.
big.
No, that's interesting. Those were kind of the main things that I was interested to learn about. So that's good. And I think interesting for our listeners to hear that too. So also on your LinkedIn, it says that you were kind of like the power behind some of these different mastermind groups that have gotten together, the STR masterminds, and what was the other ones that are there?
We did SCR Legends
Legends, yeah. Okay.
for a long time. We our educational company was called Overnight Success, and we had a handful of different things in there. We had Legends Mastermind, which was for operators at scale. We would create these incredible 5-day retreats in different parts of the world and bring some incredible CEOs together just to mastermind and help each other grow. We did that for a long time. And then we had Legends X, which is our 90-day accelerator, where we were helping short-term rental hosts, vacation rental managers that had a handful of listings on doing exactly what we're talking about, building those brands, setting up the systems, hiring the team members, and growing something that's like organic and natural to them. So we did that for quite a bit. And that was fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We impacted a lot of companies that way.
But not doing it anymore.
We're still doing it. I stepped away from that as CEO to go all in on Freewyld. I'm a big believer that you have to put the blinders on and say no to shiny objects and all of that. And overnight success and all the masterminds and everyone that we helped with that, it was incredible, but it was pulling me away from what I actually wanted to do the most, which was Freewyld and be in the business. And overnight success was growing very, very quickly in it. And I had to get to this point where I had to decide to really essentially put my heart and soul into either overnight success or what I wanted to do. And I realized like Freewyld is something that the origin story is very close to my heart. And it's something that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Right. And I just absolutely love it. So I decided to go all in on that. And it's been incredible. So yeah, overnight success is still running. It's more evergreen. So we don't have coaches, one-to-one coaches anymore. And we're not doing the in-person masterminds, but people, if they need help with systems and trainings and all of that, we still have that available for people to join.
Out of curiosity, one thing that Alex and I talk to people about a lot is that getting the education piece out to people. And we've found it challenging from the traditional vacation rental side of it, is like that outreach to that short-term rental side of the business. And so we keep talking about this like olive branch. And it's not really, it doesn't need an olive branch. We just need to know where to go, like where to go get these people. And so for you, how were you getting in front of those people? Because it does feel like it's somewhat fragmented, but it's somewhat together in all these little small groups, depending where you are around the country. And it's almost like an underground community that's sort of risen up. But how did you reach out and get in front of these people? So like if somebody wants to start out and they're looking for education information, they knew to find you.
Yeah. So our approach towards this, and it's still my approach now, like why I'm jumping on podcasts and sharing what we're doing with Freewyld. And, I've been doing this from the beginning. I've never looked at myself as an expert in this space ever. I'm a forever student, always learning and experimenting. And, most of those experiments don't work. And I'll share my lessons from that. And then the ones that are working, I share my lessons from that. So I'm a big believer of just consistently experimenting in your business and then sharing those results and those lessons with everybody. So we were just constantly pumping out information on what we were learning as we were growing our businesses. And people, a lot of people connected with it. Some people didn't. And that was really our approach towards it. So it's like we, shared on our podcast. We shared social media. We've created a email list, a newsletter that has been going for like 8 years now. And we have a few tens of thousands of people on there that have, really just joined to kind of follow. And I just spoke to someone today who's joining our revenue management service, who's been following us for 8 years, reading our emails on a weekly basis for 8 years. And I've never spoken to him until today. I'm like, this is freaking cool. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just like what you guys are doing now is like consistently just sharing with what you're learning, the experiments that you're taking. But you definitely need something that people can connect to. And it's either, for us, it was a podcast and an email newsletter. And then from there, we would introduce to them the ways that we can support them.
Gotcha. So what does the sales outreach process look like as far as trying to find these different communities to bring them into Freewyld?
Man, yeah, it's a very difficult asset to find these like cabin communities in these locations where people are ready to sell. So it's a lot of personal outreach. We are leveraging our community of kind of sharing with the world like what we're buying and what we're looking for. And we have a lot of people kind of bringing us properties that they're aware of, or introducing us to communities that are in their towns or markets that they're in, that they feel would be a good Freewyld property. So that's a big like top of funnel for us. And then two is we've identified about 16 different markets throughout the country that we want to buy something in. And my team is just consistently trying to find those companies and then just reaching out like, hey, if you want to sell, we want to buy. So it's a lot of manual outreach.
Yeah, I would imagine. And how many locations did you say you were in? How many doors?
Yeah, we just have our first location. It had, we opened it up a little less than a year ago under the Freewyld brand. We bought the first lot, had 4 existing cabins that we renovated. And then we bought all the surrounding property to it. And we're building out 15 additional cabins. a bunch of programming and experience. It's on about 3 acres of land. We're working on our second and third purchases right now, where each one of those locations will have about 30 cabins on each property. And then, we're negotiating some other ones, but we're not sure if they'll go through. So hopefully by this time next year, a year from now, the goal is to have 4 additional locations.
So the beginning of my career was actually in hotels, in conference facilities, conventions, that kind of thing. So like I'm thinking that like groups, business, that type of stuff. Is that something that you think you would do to put out in front of like travel agents and meeting planners and things to be able to, it sounds like perfect facilities for company retreats, or again, I mean, anything that you could do with a group, but do you foresee yourself getting into that space as well?
Yeah, 100%. A big part of our business is group rentals, which is beautiful, right? Because it just makes it so much easier for us to execute at a high level on these. But yeah, so part of our model is, along with the individual cabins, we also build out amenities and programming on the property for the individuals that are staying at the property, but then also for events. So a big focus of ours is actually bringing in masterminds, business masterminds, business retreats, things like that. We do micro weddings, but that it requires a bit more hands-on with that. So yeah, we'll do some micro weddings from time to time, but our big avenue for retreats is business masterminds. So we just finished, there was a women's retreat at our location just a couple weeks ago. They were there for a week. They rented all the cabins. We brought in tents for them. They set up the tents, stayed on site, and they were there doing a full retreat for a week, and it was
Cabins
beautiful.
or tents?
Tents. Yeah. So
They're in tents.
they brought in like glamping tents and set them up.
Gotcha, okay, yeah.
And
I
we
was
had
thinking a bunch of cabins sounds good for an idea Annie and I have, but I don't know if we'd be good in tents, but
yeah.
Definitely not. I'm not a tent person, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a unique structure, or a unique
Yeah,
agreement with them, but yeah, so I think that's a big opportunity as well,
it's
especially for
huge,
like remote
huge.
companies to do
Yeah. Oh,
retreats.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a massive opportunity. How do you get in front of them? Like, what is the marketing strategy to get in front of those groups?
Yeah, so right now we're working with a couple of different, they're almost like OTAs essentially, where you can list properties for group rentals, weddings, things like that. Because we're about 2 hours outside of Hollywood, we're also marketing the property for movie locations, and TV shoots, things like that. And then as far as finding companies, we have some marketing that is targeting companies in the area for this being a retreat center. So we're kind of just slowly turning it on. Right now, it's a lot of word of mouth.
Very cool. Do you have any target markets that you're looking to go? You were mentioning that you guys are gonna go into Hill Country. I think you said Hill Country in Texas, right? Outside of Austin? Okay. Pretty familiar with some of the properties there, and they're beautiful. Like, some of there's it's a real I didn't have any idea that that area, I just always pictured Texas as like this, like, wide open, cattle fields or something like that, but there's a lot of green lushness around the Austin area. But what areas are you looking to move into or expand into?
Yeah, so as of right now, we're kind of just focused on the West Coast. I would say, like, if you draw a line right down the center of the country, everything west of that, we're kind of focused on these markets that are a 2 to 3 hour drive from the big cities that have over 1 million people in those cities, right? So we've identified like 16 markets that we really love. And you guys can envision this. It's like those secondary mountain towns or desert towns that they're not the park cities, but they're outside of the Park City, Utah areas, right? We're looking outside of Austin right now in Hill Country, but we're also looking outside of Nashville in those markets. Where multiple different markets throughout California, which California is just a challenge to do business in and own
I'm
real estate in.
sure.
It's a freaking
Yeah.
nightmare. But it's also like one of the most beautiful states in the country, where it's just like 2 hours in any direction, you have just complete different beauty in nature. So yeah, we're kind of looking in those different markets right now, all the way up to Washington, and then Utah. Tennessee, Austin, Texas, those types of areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and, I feel like the competition has kinda changed that in, like, Gatlinburg and some of these more traditional markets, a lot of those communities have ended up getting purchased by, like, timeshare vacation club inventory, so it's like you're competing in some of these markets, I'm sure, against some people with some real heavy pockets, which has gotta be a little complicated, but I think it's a great business model, and I think, the unique thing that you're able to do with these properties that a traditional timeshare or hotel is not going to do is they're not going to take that next step of doing these really unique renovations and making them truly Airbnb friendly because it's not their ball of wax. Like that's not really how they use them. And in a lot of cases, they end up using them more as those are the properties that they might renovate them, but like it's still kind of basic. But as far as like vacation club, that's used for, the free giveaways that they use to get them into taking the timeshare tour. But
Right.
would love to
Right.
see you take over in that space and get some of them and
Thank
make
you.
them into cool accommodations.
Yeah, that's the goal. We want to. I have a pretty big vision around Freewyld, but we're taking our time because we notice that like once you get to a certain level in business, you have pressure from investors and from the market and everything else that kind of takes, in my opinion, takes away from the guest experience and the product that you're delivering, and it becomes cookie cutter and just like they serve a purpose for sure, but it becomes forgettable. And we want our guests to just be blown away from the moment they show up to the property to when they check out. They're thinking of revisiting again, right, and booking that next trip. And that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for bigger companies to invest that much into it. Maybe it's just a naive approach to business because I'm in an early stage of it, but I do believe that it's something that guests want. The communities that we're moving into are happy about the product that we're bringing to the town, and it makes sense for us financially. So, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it's a model that we can continue to scale over the years.
Sounds exciting. And you're doing, I mean, again, the industry needs creativity and ideas like this that are going to set itself apart. So I applaud you for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, super nice to chat with you today, Eric, and I'm so glad that we got to finally connect. But where will we see you? Or do you go to the events, or where can our listeners find you? If not at the events, just what's the
Yeah.
best way to find you?
Yeah, I'm gonna start tapping back into some of the events. Have taken a back seat to a lot of the industry events, but I'm excited to get back into it. I won't be at the next VRMA, but my team will be there. But yeah, the best way to contact me is either through freewyld.com or LinkedIn is where I spend a lot of my time. And I've been creating a lot of content and sharing content on that platform. So it's Eric D. Moeller on LinkedIn.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here today. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And until next week, thanks for tuning in, everybody.